You've heard it murmured in ecoforms, parroted by policymakers on global stages, and etched into every sustainability report since the Paris Accord. Green policies are just about saving the planet. A noble push for cleaner air, renewables, efficiency, nothing more than incentives and nudges to guide us toward a brighter future. They say it's voluntary, affordable, with subsidies flowing like rivers to ease the transition. No threats to your wallet, your home, your freedom. Supplies of capital endless. Demand for change gradual, without real scarcity in the system. No hidden force twisting the knife. Just a movement that floats between 20 and 30% of GDP commitments, year after year, while the world pivots to electric dreams and carbon credits. That's the lie. The monumental deception that's kept you complacent, watching as the architects blueprint the transfer in the shadows. Because green policies aren't voluntary. They're embedding. And right now, as we speak, a colossal machine is spooling up. One veiled by regulatory haze, fiscal noise, and intentional misdirection. This isn't some alarmist screed scribbled in a bunker. This is the machinery of balance sheets fracturing, geopolitical power plays, and a megatrend siphoning ownership like a vortex devouring horizons. Picture this. You're standing before a vast administrative vault, the air humming with the sterile buzz of forgotten sovereignty. But as you peer deeper, you realize the locks aren't on the doors. They're on your deeds. That's ownership's reality today. And in this four-part investigation, we're shredding the veil off the biggest lie, that green policies won't seize your assets, and confiscation is a relic of the past. Part 1. We expose the promise illusion, the fabricated benevolence that's masked decades of overcommitment. Part 2. We track the hidden enforcers, the titans lurking in the depths, accumulating control without a ripple. Part 3. We uncover the mechanism, the compliance black hole that's accelerating the drain, pulling assets into mandates that can't function without them. And Part 4, we reveal the megatrend, the inevitable smash that's coiling the spring for a historic transfer. You need to hear this, because if you're a homeowner, a saver quietly building your nest, or just someone sick of the system's sleight of hand, this lie has cost you equity. It's kept ownership suppressed, your security capped, while the insiders consolidate. But the truth? It's rising now, urgent and unyielding. Lean in, we're diving deep. Part 1 begins with the promise illusion. Let's dismantle it layer by layer. You think green policies are optional? Governments offering grants, tax breaks, gentle prods toward solar panels and EVs? The narrative looks airtight. Summits pledging trillions, timelines stretching to 2050. Enough to inspire without alarm, right? Wrong. That's the gloss, the iceberg tip they parade. Plunge below, and you find the overreach. Commitments snowballing because old promises, pensions, healthcare, debt servicing, aren't yielding to new ones. Above-ground benevolence? A facade concealing entrenched liabilities. Remember 2008? The crisis exposed leverage bubbles, but recovery birthed a surge. Green mandates spiked with stimulus packages. Why? Not just climate fears. It was the first fissure in the capacity myth. Industrial demand from emerging economies nibbled at edges. China ramping factories, Europe hoarding virtue signals. But the lie endured. Plenty of room in the budget. Policymakers ramped pledges, sure, but at what toll? Growth declining, tax bases depleting. Fast forward to today, and primary fiscal surpluses, those dedicated to sustainability, are ghosts. Most green funding comes as a byproduct of deficit spending, welfare expansions, defense budgets. When those falter, green output craters. Look at the data. Global debt peaked in 2023 at 336% of GDP. Since then, a relentless climb. 2025 clocks in over 350%, with projections for 2030 dipping into uncharted territory. Why? Geopolitical snarls. The US locked in trade wars and entitlement battles. Europe's giants facing demographic droughts, slashing green subsidies. Russia's pivot, sanctioned into isolation. And don't start on emerging markets. Debt distress turning pledges into pipe dreams. But here's the kicker, the stratum they bury in annexes. Promises aren't what they seem. The UN reports visible commitments at $100 trillion for net zero. Sounds ambitious? That's less than 2 years of global GDP. And the invisible ones? The embedded mandates in building codes, vehicle standards, energy tariffs, shrinking freedoms. Leaked IMF briefs hint at a net overcommitment of $50 trillion in the last 5 years alone. It's like a reservoir overflowing, while the engineers swear it's contained. You feel that? The terrain shifting beneath your foundations? This isn't benevolence. It's an illusion, propped by deficit illusions and bond games. Institutions like the World Bank, remember their trillion-dollar climate funds? They've been the wardens, suppressing scrutiny to sustain the lie. But fractures form. ESG funds sucking up capital, locking it in mandates. Retail citizens complying early, creating a grassroots squeeze. Short punch. The promise isn't sustainable, it's evaporating. And as we move to part 2, you'll see who's capitalizing on it. The hidden enforcers, the titans. Imagine a abyssal chasm, lightless and sprawling. Down there, colossal silhouettes drift silently, appendages uncoiling to ensnare the unwary. That's the green machine's underbelly, where the titans operate. Not the flashy activists chanting on streets. The real ones, multilateral funds, corporate behemoths, and obscured regulators who maneuver without disturbing the surface. We've shattered the promise facade. Now, track the enforcers. Start with the IMF. Not the public lenders, though they're involved. The policy architects. Washington's been quietly amassing green leverage for years beyond media glare. Why? Debt dominance. Climate funds gobbling national budgets. Over $500 billion annually and climbing. But the IMF's not just funding. They're stockpiling conditions. Reports from their Article 4 consultations show unreported strings, mandates vanishing into fiscal frameworks. It's an iceberg order, small visible loans masking the bulk below. Then there's Europe, the EU's regulatory leviathans, bar none. Official figures peg 2025 green investments at $1 trillion. But whisper networks in Brussels corridors talk of shadow directives adding another $300 billion unvoted and untracked. Why the frenzy? Hedge against energy dependence. And here's the twist. Eurozone billionaires, the Arnolds and Betancourts of the world, diversifying into compliant assets amid fiscal froth. Shift across the Atlantic. BlackRock, the juggernaut with $10 trillion under management. Their iShares ESG funds have ballooned, holding stakes in compliant sectors. But dig deeper. Affiliated entities accumulating regulatory influence off balance. It's not passive, it's strategic. Preparing for what? The transition squeeze, where noncompliance becomes a liability in portfolios, grids, supply chains. But the true titans? Tech and energy giants. Google, Siemens, Exxon rebranded. They're not lobbying vaguely. They're securing forward mandates directly from governments. Siemens alone, ramping grid upgrades, needs compliance certifications for connectors and infrastructure. Larry Page tweets AI, but his engineers obsess over green purity. Leaked compliance docs show orders doubling year over year. And don't overlook the central banks. Not the rate setters like the Fed, though they're dabbling. The quiet ones. Asian outfits hedging against dollar dominance. Singapore's vaults, traditionally gold-heavy, now allocating to green bonds. Why hide it? To avoid sparking resistance? It's a loading spring coiling tighter. You see the pattern? These enforcers aren't advocating. They're accumulating because they know the lie's expiration. Promises tight, mandates inexorable. They're the vacuum, sucking up control before the retail crowd awakens. But what drives them? That's part 3, the mechanism, the compliance black hole. Feel the pull yet? It's intensifying. The mechanism. This is where the saga turns ominous. We've exposed the promised mirage, tracked the titans. Now, unveil the engine devouring ownership at an accelerating pace. It's not arbitrary. It's a meticulously forged black hole built on regulations that embed compliance deep into the fabric of assets. Irreplaceable, insatiable. Start with the transformation megashift, building retrofits. Each structure slathered with energy audits for efficiency. Global mandates exploding. Billions in upgrades by 2030, projected to hit trillions by 2040. That's an ownership drain of millions of properties annually, minimum. And efficiency gains? They demand even stricter standards, not less. Vehicle fleets, compliance and emissions and batteries, real estate portfolios, laced with it for resale value. But it's deeper. The administrative black hole, permits, inspections, databases, compliance, the glue and deeds, titles, loans. Compliance hubs booming with ESG hype. Each registry siphoning micro-freedoms, but scale it to hyperscale systems like those from central authorities, and it's billions vanishing yearly. Carbon pricing networks, antennas riddled with penalties for integrity. Internet of regulations, trillions of assets, each a tiny ownership thief. Public finance, subsidies and budgets, penalties and taxes. Post-pandemic, demand surged 20%. Defense, infrastructure, logistics, procurement, all compliance dependent for precision. Here's the mechanism's core. Substitution failure. They've tried. Voluntary incentives, too lax. Market forces, too slow. Technology promises leniency, but adoption lags. Costs outweigh freedoms in a tight regime. Result? Mandates inelastic. They grow regardless of resistance. Geopolitics fuels it. US-EU alignments force chain standardization, hoarding buffers. Energy crises in Asia spike retrofit builds. Debasement? Owners lock in upgrades early. Numbers don't lie. World Economic Forum forecasts a compliance deficit of $15 trillion for 2025, the largest ever. 2026, wider. It's a concrete floor cracking under pressure. You feel the urgency? This mechanism isn't slowing, it's revving. Leading us to part 4, the megatrend, the collision. Brace yourself. The megatrend. This is the climax, the inexorable force that's been building through promise erosion, titan accumulation, and compliance suction. It's the convergence of global resets, fiscal, environmental, administrative, that positions green mandates as the linchpin, not a side player, the star. First, the sustainability pivot. Net zero decrees, governments pledging quadrillions to overhauls. UN summits spit targets, but reality bites. Retrofits, grids, EVs require compliance at scales unseen. By 2030, demand could hit 50% of global assets for green alignment alone. Capacities? Stagnant at best. It's a loading spring, compressed to breaking. Administrative acceleration. Digital registries, AI audits, edge enforcements, all compliance hungry. Oracle's databases, compliance in packaging, quantum oversight, compliance superconductors. As governance evolves, compliance's role solidifies. Fiscal storm, debt debasement rampant. Liabilities pile like avalanches. Global at 300 trillion, inflation sticky, rates volatile. Gold gets headlines, but compliance is the system's metal. Enforceable, scalable, with mandate upside. In crises, it outperforms. 1933, gold grab. 2013, Cyprus squeeze. Geopolitical black swans. Trade tensions, supply shortages amplify compliance needs. Climate flares, pivots hasten, China's pivot east. Mandates rerouted. The trend's trajectory, freedom suppression ending. Paper assets, deeds, titles, dominated by states, but compliance premiums soaring. OECD reports disconnects, voluntary adoptions flat, enforced bids up 15%. Projections? Analysts whisper 20-30% asset transfers by 2030. But Titans know higher. It's historic, a rerun of Versailles reparations, but systemic, not singular. You stand at the precipice. The lie crumbles. Green policies aren't benevolent. They're the scarcest threat to ownership in generations. The transfer? Inevitable. Like a tsunami gathering offshore, it will reshape fortunes, societies, lives. This isn't hype. It's investigation turned revelation. You've seen the parts. Illusion shattered, enforcers exposed, mechanism unveiled, trend ignited. Now act. Diversify holdings. Build optionality. Join the aware. The green confiscation is historic, inevitable. A wealth transfer from the blind to the sighted. You deserve to be on the winning side. Fight the lie. Claim your edge. And if this investigation lit a fire in you, the kind that demands more uncovers, more truths, hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. Because the system's a war zone and I'm your scout in the trenches. Next time, we hunt another lie. Stay sharp.